I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like. I Mix What I Like.org at I Mix What I Like for all your relevant social media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, and you know who it is. We're happy to have him back again, Dhoruba bin-Wahad, my favorite living activist, philosopher, political analyst, former political prisoner, former member of the Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, longtime pundit and activist, supporter of a lot of different efforts. Joining us once again, Dhoruba, welcome back to the program. Thanks again, man.
Thanks for having me back, Jared.
Well, we have a particular reason for inviting you back because we're publishing at imixwhatilike.org today what you've sent for publication, a piece called A History Through the Life of Dhoruba bin-Wahad. And I want to get to that, but admittedly, I want to actually start with something that you and I were talking about earlier off air that I want to bring to public conversation. And it really centers around the November 2020 election and my concern in response to a lot of Black commentary, political punditry, including those nominally thought to be radical or progressive, are all just simply saying that in this moment, now you and I have talked about this on several occasions in the years past. I invite people to imixwhatilike.org, go back and get all of these interviews, including the one we did right after Trump's election, where you encouraged us not to be afraid, but to develop a united front against fascism. But we're hearing
I said that back then too.
You said that exactly, absolutely. But to get to the question just quickly, a lot of folks are simply saying, we have to vote for Joe Biden because this is an existential crisis, the most important election in human history. Trump is going to destroy everything and everybody if he gets another term. And anyone who doesn't vote for Joe Biden, whether you don't vote at all or vote for an alternative political party, is supporting Trump and is anti-Black, anti-revolutionary, anti-progressive. And with the specific focus, and I say publicly that it, coming from a Twitter exchange I had with Dr. Greg Carr, my longtime friend and comrade, who was just, I think I said, browbeating a bunch of us by saying that in particular, the appointment of federal judges is of major concern. And if Trump gets another 4 years, he'll pack the federal court with right-wing reactionary judges, and it'll make it hard for all of the brothers and sisters and people that come before them to get any kind of justice. And then in particular, he evoked in our conversation, our debate, to the extent that it ever rose to that level, he evoked the history of political prisoners and said he thought political prisoners would like very much to know that Trump hadn't stacked the federal court that was deciding whether or not they might get some light of day eventually themselves. I mentioned you by name and said I've talked to you a number of times and followed a number of political prisoners and have never once heard anyone advocate that as a tactic for themselves or anyone else. But I'll leave it to you. I would like us to start with this issue of the November elections, and particularly this question of federal judges and their relationship to political prisoners and those just incarcerated in general. I give it to you.
Well, first of all, Jared, we did talk about this offline, and I had indicated that I don't think that the fact that getting a reactionary, neoconservative racist to substitute for marmalade man who basically has no ideology, to substitute for him is like in order to get judges on the bench is sort of like I don't know how to say it. It flies in the face. It flies in the face of real history. I mean, we know that since Taney voted in the Dred Scott decision, that the Supreme Court has only played a significant role in the changing of American institutions on maybe 3 or 4 occasions in the last 2 centuries, basically. I mean, you know, besides the Roe v. Wade and the civil the Board of Education, Brown versus the Board of Ed, and separate but equal postures, the Supreme Court has always shown, and I'm talking about the Supreme Court now, the ultimate court in the land, has always shown that its primary focus, its primary purpose, and its primary basis for all of their decisions is the preservation of the American Republic, is the preservation of the United States so-called constitutional republic. And that means the modification, the expansion of, or the rehabilitation of the white supremacist social construct that makes up America. So the Supreme Court will never abolish the institutional framework of white supremacy. They may modify it, they may reform it, they may make it seem more palatable, they may even champion the rights of the permanent underclass in doing this, but they will not change the paradigm of power through legislation or through legal means by which the rich and the property class own this country and own us. Having said that, now when it comes to the district level, the district courts, the local district courts, in which I imagine your friend is alluding to, in the sense that this is where the immediate appeals of political prisoners would go. If we look at the history, no political prisoner's appeal has made it through any district court in America since we've had political prisoners in the last 60 years. Not one. Name one. Mine's never got to it. When it did get to the federal court, it was knocked down. So, and we look at the history of that. When Thurgood Marshall was on the Supreme Court, and Eldridge Cleaver, I believe it was Eldridge, appealed to the Supreme Court on a stay of a judgment to reincarcerate him, Thurgood Marshall abstained. Actually, I believe not abstained. He actually wrote the Supreme Court decision not to hear the case. This is Thurgood Marshall. So, and I gave another example recently about the Supreme Court decision regarding Native indigenous people, in which they declared that the United States Treaty was binding on the present administration, and that one of the states, I believe it was Oklahoma or some state like that, actually still belonged to the Native people, and that the U.S. had violated their treaty agreement. But of course, they made a note that doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the economics of the state. It doesn't change the political structure of the state. It doesn't give the Native people back the land that was taken. It doesn't do anything. It just declares that we had a treaty, we have to uphold it. And the person that wrote that treaty, that wrote the deciding opinion, the majority opinion, was a Trump appointee. So the same way a Trump appointee, look at what's the other one, the Negro up there, what's his name?
Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, Clarence, yeah, Uncle Thomas. Uncle Thomas on the back. When's the last time you heard anything from him?
But this would be, and I don't want to just keep making this about one person, but this would be, to the extent that I understand it, would be Professor Carr's point that right-wing Republican appointees are stacking the bench and making it difficult for progress to occur. So it would be better if Biden were in office to put in the next round of potentially Supreme Court justices, with Ginsburg constantly falling ill, or
Sotomayor is falling ill. They're all going to die in a minute.
It shouldn't be Sotomayor. I would hope that she's not ill and she's young enough.
Ain't nobody getting out of this life alive, man.
Well, but what I'm saying is, but in the next 4 years, presumably, of the people.
Is she just in the hospital?
Well, that's Ginsburg. That's what I'm saying.
Ginsburg. Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. So she might not. It would be presumed, if anybody, I'm not trying to push anybody into the grave, but if anybody,
I am.
Well, I was going to catch myself there a little bit. I know. First of all, I forgot who I was talking to. Second of all, anyway. So you clarify that. Anyway, I'm speaking.
Okay, well, what I'm saying.
So anyway, so my point is, wouldn't it, or his point, wouldn't it be better if Biden were in there selecting a judge? Wouldn't it be better? And then for the district courts, the same thing. Although I would want to remind everybody that was a sister that revoked the parole of Jalil Muntaqim recently too. By the way,
I don't think so, because who is Biden going to appoint? if Biden was to get in there, and let's just, and we all know Biden's track record, and we all know that Biden's a crypto racist. We all know this. I mean, he's weighed in on the wrong side of history since he was a senator. But
in the Senate, he supported Clarence Thomas,
exactly,
and Scalia,
and all of them. And so I'm just saying, if just for argument's sake, we want to say that having, quote, a progressive president who then can make, quote, reasonably liberal and progressive appointments to the Supreme, to the federal court system, it does not necessarily follow that those appointees are going to deal with political cases as if they arose to a constitutional level that they have to overturn the status quo. And I'm going to give you an example, a functional example, because this person might even be a Supreme Court nominee under Biden. Let's look at the present mayor of Chicago. Okay, the present mayor of Chicago, who's been lauded as an LGBTQ and a sister who is black. You understand? And she's elected to mayor. And there's been all of these write-ups about how Chicago's going to have a new mayor and a new day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Trump has been sending troops, sending federal agents into different municipalities in order to, in Mufti, in order to suppress and intimidate protesters and dissenters. He sent them into Oregon. He sent them into Seattle. He's sending them into Chicago. Now, this has brought Trump in at loggerheads with various municipal and state elected officials. In fact, here in Atlanta, the mayor has been ordered into negotiations with the governor of the state, who wants to enforce different rules different rules for dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this sister said, and you can go, everybody go look it up. She said that she's not opposed to Trump sending these anonymous agents into Chicago as long as they're going to assist local law enforcement and the local federal district agents in pursuing crimes and violent crimes. Now, we know historically that Nixon used the war on crime as a political instrument in order to pass the Omnibus Crime and Control Act, in order to try to establish, he failed, in order to establish his control over a national police force, to create a national police force. And that Omnibus Crime and Control, Safe Streets Acts and all that stuff was aimed at the black community. It was the war on drugs was the mechanism by which the police were militarized. They were militarized during the war on drugs. The prison industrial complex grew to enormous gargantuan proportions under the war on drugs, okay? And all of these efforts were led by who? They were led by black prosecutors. They were led by black political officials. They were championed by black legislators in the Congressional Black Caucus. And they have led to the devastation that we have in the black community today, to the militarized police, to unfettered police violence. They have led to all of these things. So now this woman said that she would be okay with Trump into putting these troops into her city, as long as he was doing it for law enforcement purposes. She's an ex-prosecutor. Same with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was the one that was packing the California jails with black flesh. Kamala Harris facilitated that. All of these dogs that masqueraded with wigs on and toupees, and they were all servants of the police, the policemen's unions and associations. They all paid tribute to the police unions. Nobody could get elected in America in the urban situation unless they had police union endorsement. Now, how does the police union have so much power, got more power than the black community? How is it? So putting someone in office, and I'm quite sure Biden got into position and he was looking around for a judge, he would have no hesitation in appointing a black LGBTQ appointee like the sister in Chicago for the Supreme Court judgeship, and then have her vetted through Congress, and then she sits in the Supreme Court as the first, quote, Black female LGBTQ person was appointed by Biden. And everybody loves Biden. And watch the decisions that's going to come down from this sister. If she could go for Trump sending troops into her municipality under her jurisdiction, if she can go for that and say, oh, as long as he's doing it to fight crime, what would she do on the Supreme Court if an issue came up before her around political prisoners and shooting police and the police feeling that they're being attacked and that it's open season on the police and that therefore there has to be the decision made on this? Every judge has went down the line and has ruled in favor of the police whenever it's come to political prisoners. All of them, whether they were liberal or whether they were conservative. They all did, whether they were Black or whether they were white. Because the issue of political prisoners goes far beyond just a mere appointeeship and a mere philosophy of the judges. The issue of political prisoners goes to the heart of U.S. treatment of African Americans' resistance and the radical tradition. It goes to the very heart of our relationship to law enforcement. So there's no judge on the planet that's going to say a Jaleel Muntaqim should have been granted parole, and because the parole board was discriminating against him, and the police union should have no say so in this. They're not going to write no opinion like that. You see, now we could wishfully think, maybe because we're in this historical moment, a lot of things are happening now that we never thought we would see.
Well, that's part of the argument for sure, that people, at least in terms of Biden himself as a president, the argument is, well, we are more likely to be able to push him once he's elected than we could push Trump. So the argument might therefore be that one of his appointees might be more easily swayed in a progressive direction.
But wasn't that said about Obama?
Absolutely. I mean, this is my point. This has always been my point, that this is exactly what was said under Obama. And then Obama got elected and everybody admitted, all the so-called progressive movements admitted, we can't get funding, we can't get support, because the idea was everything was already taken care of. So the movement Obama basically got wiped out, whatever the movement is.
Because Obama didn't reimagine policing.
No,
he was in a position, if his imagination would have ran away with him, he was in a position to radically change a whole lot of stuff.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and this is the other point. Like when my dear, and then I'm gonna leave it alone here. But the only other 2 points I wanted to add with my dear brother Carr was that one, when he evoked the political prisoner idea, I mentioned one that Leonard Peltier is actually running for office now with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, or the socialist ticket with Gloria La Riva. So I'm not sure that he has any hope for Biden, given he's running against Biden. And then Biden himself has said he does not want to, not only does he not want to defund the police, he wants to increase the funding by $300 million, which
of course he does.
So then I thought it was illogical to say that his federal judge appointees would do better for Black people and political prisoners, when more Black people would likely be in front of those judges, given the over-policing that he wants to increase.
Absolutely.
So it's
an oxymoron. And this, again, is a result. A lot of this, I think a lot of the discussion that we're having now, including your comrade, the professor, is based on the fact that they do believe that white supremacy is a reformable paradigm. Mm. So if we start from that proposition, we lost. Mm. I mean, it's setting the parameters of an issue, of a debate, is very, very important. You know, what is left and what is right, what is extreme and what is moderate, what is reformable and what is ridiculous. All of these things go into the debate, and the parameters of the debate have already been set by individuals in the so-called misleadership class, that it's our duty to reform white supremacy. Now, I ain't never heard it being the duty of the slave to reform the plantation. You see, that's not our job. Our job is to escape the plantation. It's to get the fuck out off the plantation as soon as possible. If we can't get off the plantation, slay the slave master. One of the two. Either that, or we just going to go on saying, hurry sundown, see what tomorrow will bring. And that's what your brother is saying. He's saying, hurry sundown and see what Biden will bring. Okay? Hurry Trump down and see what another cracker would bring for us. We done been here and did this, man. Come on. You know, they're not going to effectively change anything. Now, if these brothers who are talking about legal strategies are serious, and I believe he's a professor of law, your friend, right?
Well, I mean, he does teach. Yeah. He has, I mean, specifically, I believe he's Africana Studies, African American Studies at Howard University, the chair of the department there. But he does have a law degree background, and he does teach in the Howard Law School, at least some. Yeah.
Okay,
so
and I don't want to single. I'm not trying to single him out or anything.
No, I mean, that's on me because I admittedly.
No, you haven't singled him out. You didn't single him out.
In terms of this exchange, you know.
You just put forth the argument that he is making, and because you respect him, you want to give feedback on his argument. I understand that. That's not what I just put that in to say I don't want to single him out, to say that I've been trying to get a number of attorneys in attorney fraternities like the National Lawyers Guild, the NCBL, to file a lawsuit, to file a injunctive order against the Fraternal Order of Police and the NYPD Police Union and the Chicago Police Union and the Atlanta Police Union and the LA PD Police Unions, and to file a class action against them, asking the court to re-examine their certification and to recertify and to demand that these unions be recertified because their constituency, their membership are not working class people. They are not workers. Cops are not workers. They're armed agents of the state. And therefore, the police unions exert an inordinate amount of influence on the political process that governs and manages and administers and supervises the armed agents of the state. This is why our political prisoners are in jail, not because of the federal judges, but because of the police union. They would have been there. Jaleel would have been out of jail 20 years ago if it wasn't for the police union. Every time he goes to parole board, they spend union money to make sure he stays in jail. They spend thousands and thousands of dollars to influence a state agency to go against the rules of the state boards of parole that says a prior conviction cannot be used as the sole basis for discontinuing for not granting parole. And in every case that the political prisoner goes to the court, he's told about the crime and what do you call it? The
exigencies? Is that
the exigencies of the crime and why he shouldn't be given parole. And he's sent back for another 3 years. Sundiata actually had his case.
Sundiata Kohli?
Yes, he had the court. He had a district court, I believe, or state Supreme Court. I'm not clear on whether it was federal or state. But they had ruled that he fit all the criteria for parole and he should be given parole. And they sent it back to the state for him to go back to the parole board and get paroled. And the union intervened and had that process short-stopped. And Sundiata Kohli is still in prison. So I do not believe that just appointing a judge, I believe that one monkey don't stop no show. And just getting one judge sitting up on the bench or two judges or three judges in various district courts is going to change the paradigm of the legal, between the paradigm of power between the legal and the political system. Political prisoners are in jail as a device of political repression. Of legal repression uses a device to politically imprison them. So they're all criminals by the law.
And then also just tactically, it loses strength to put a focus on federal judges as opposed to what you're advocating here, a focus on police unions, which is an interesting strategy. And if I could, I'd like to use that as a quick segue to the piece that we're ultimately here to talk about, which is all very much connected, as will be revealed or made plain here in quick order. This history of through the life of Dhoruba bin-Wahad, you have it's a short piece, but you have a short forward to it by attorney Lamis Deek. Am I saying the name correctly? Lamis Deek. Forgive me for that. Where Deek writes almost to the point here. Longtime freedom fighter and former political prisoner Dhoruba bin-Wahad penned a serious history lesson for us all to soak up and grow on. It covers the case around the Panther 21, the BLA or Black Liberation Army, the early merging of the FBI and local police departments, and how they worked overtime to cause a split in the Black Panther Party. Read this and read it again, reflect, and then come back and read it again. And then you have a short outline here where you talk about various individuals, including yourself, and their relationship to this particular case, but also to the federal government and policing apparatus, the counterintelligence program, and sort of put into context, I think more appropriately, certainly than the 2020, mainstream electoral presidential campaign or election season. All of these issues that we're talking about here. So if there's something that I'm sure there is, but please do what you can to smooth out that transition for us, and then talk a little bit about this piece that folks will find at imixwhatilike.org.
Oh, the reason why I sent it to you, and I wanted to really get it out, because if people try to read it relatively carefully, they would see that the Watergate period, the period of Watergate, occurred at a certain historical moment in U.S. history. It was when the Vietnam War had become clear to everybody that it was unwinnable. There was a massive anti-war movement in the country. Over almost 63% or 64% of the American people felt that the Vietnam War was wrong. Daniel Ellsberg would come out during this period with the papers,
the Pentagon Papers.
The Pentagon Papers, which shows that the American invasion and Vietnam War was a hoax, was done on false pretexts. Now, keep in mind that the same type of information came out on George Bush too.
That's right.
In manufacturing the war in Iraq. Okay, and when I say keep that in mind, because I want people to understand that we have repeatedly come through these particular moments in time. And in each time, the neoliberals and the black misleadership has glossed over the facts and the realities and let these people get away with murder, suborning perjury, leading a nation to war, spending the national treasure and blood on useless endeavors, from Kissinger all the way up to now, and what we have with these idiots in the White House.
And please forgive this interruption, but I just want to highlight to add to that point. I mean, Obama did the same thing with Libya, with
absolutely
with AFRICOM and drones and surveillance and attacking whistleblowers, and even Trump. For all that people hate Trump, it was the neoliberals and the neocons that pushed him to kill Soleimani and trying to push him to go to war with Russia when he actually doesn't want to, which is a fascinating contradiction. But anyway,
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it was not, and it's not only the neocons and neoliberals. It was AIPAC. It was the Zionist lobby.
That's right.
And this just comes to the other thing. Now, this is why I'm saying all of this, because when I say this to these lawyers, let's do a class action. Okay, I'm quite sure you'll have 1,000 different organizations just talking about defunding the police, certifying the police, and all of these things. They would be glad to get onto as plaintiffs on such a lawsuit. Okay, now it's not a question of whether we win, lose, or draw in the lawsuit. The question is that we raise the issue of the role of law enforcement, of police unions in the militarization of police and the maintaining of a police state. They have an interest in maintaining a police state. They have direct ties to the arms industry. They are the ones that accept Israeli police trainers of U.S. law enforcement. They're the ones that send law enforcement abroad to Africa to train local other police. They're all union members. Okay, so all of these things, and so we need to challenge that. But we also need to challenge AIPAC. Why isn't AIPAC registered as an agent of a foreign government? Why don't we follow? Why isn't it has there never been a lawsuit from the left? Understand this. This has to come from the left. It's never going to come from the right. Mm-hmm. Why hasn't there been a lawsuit against AIPAC? Huh? An organization that literally writes U.S. policy for Israel. I mean, they literally do that, and they brag about it. Remember when Obama didn't want to speak to Netanyahu, and it was the AIPAC that had them come into the country, do a tour, and had their mouthpieces in the Congress meet with Netanyahu over Obama's objections? Obama was supposed to be initiating U.S. foreign policy and State Department policy, and he felt that Israel wasn't being all that responsive to some of the mealy-mouthed issues around settlements and stuff, so he wasn't going to meet with it. Okay? Them Jews wasn't hearing that. You see, and in fact, they went all in on Obama. Obama was never popular with the Zionist lobby, although Obama signed the most the largest arms agreement with the state of Israel than any other president before him.
Hey man, and before we get into some nonsense, before we get Nick Cannoned over here, I want to clarify that you're talking about Zionism and as a political movement, as opposed to Jews as a people. And I don't want to get into that whole thing today.
No.
Because I just want to be clear, because I don't want to hear it, and I don't want this to become distracting.
Well, you know me, I got you. Mm-hmm. But absolutely, I mean, of course, they're not going to make a distinction between Zionism and Jews and Judaism, because that's their job. Their job is to muddy that a distinction. But we know that Israel is a European settler state. Mm-hmm. Pure and simple, and it's the major ally of the United States, and first, it's the foremost and primary ally of the U.S. that shares its technology, its first-tier technology, with the state of Israel, and it trains, it aids in that cop that was kneeling in the neck of George Floyd, he was doing what they do in Palestine on a routine basis. They were trained by Israeli special defense forces. They were trained by Israeli Shin Bet, and this is ongoing. This is today. In fact, the NYPD has an office in Tel Aviv with the NYPD on a big old logo in the middle of Tel Aviv. Now, what police department you know in Chitlin Switch, Georgia? They got a branch. They got a branch in the Congo. They got a liaison. They got a liaison office in Accra, you see, or in Liberia, Monrovia. None. You see, and they might have a majority black population in the city. They ain't got no such thing. And if we go back to the BLA, when the first BLA action occurred, that a communique was released on, the chief of detectives who conducted the initial campaign against the BLA was on vacation in Israel. Albert Seaman. And in his book, he says he got a call from the union in the U.S. and from his assistant said he better get back here because some niggas done shot some cops and it looks bad. And he flew back to the U.S. He met with Hoover. Hoover met with Nixon and his assistant, and they organized an operation called Operation New Kill.
Which you talk about in this piece. Exactly.
And this is where we are now with the Black Lives Matter movement. The same need that Nixon had in order to translate right-wing neo-conservative power into full-blown control of the state, police power, and to put it in the federal hands, put it in his hands, was to use crime and drugs and the anti-war movement and the anti-war movement to galvanize and organize the police. The first SWAT team that ever was deployed in America was deployed against the Black Panther Party in LA. Okay, and from that point on, black SWAT teams have grown exponentially to every municipality. Every town has a SWAT team. with military gear, with tanks, and with all of this stuff. The problem is that the chief executive officer, the president of the United States, cannot tell these individual police departments what to do. He cannot order them out. He cannot do anything. Only thing that he has at his disposal is the military, the FBI, Homeland Security, and the National Guard. And if you notice, over the past 3 months, Trump has used all three of them to try to exert his presence on the streets of America. He has used the National Guard. He has deployed them in other cities against the will of the local law enforcement, local people. He's used Homeland Security, which he's using now. He's using the Border Patrol in Mufti, which he's using now. He's using all these federal agencies because he does not have a national police force.
So, but isn't that so? Couldn't folks argue that Lori Lightfoot in Chicago was making a progressive stance against that by saying that she would only support them if they support local police? Because wouldn't that be the point, that by saying I'll only support federal agents in my city if they support local police, then that almost puts those federal agents at the under the purview of her authority and the local police, right? Wouldn't that be?
No, it does the opposite. It puts those agencies under the purview and the command of Trump. I mean, look at it this way. When in 1971, when they first formed the Joint Terrorist Task Force, the JTTF, right? It was a combination of this. It started in the Southern District. As you know, the Southern District of New York is one of the most influential districts in the federal panoply of government. It started in the Southern District, and it was a combined force of the alumni of the COINTELPRO operations in New York. In other words, the ones that were running the Black Desk and the Black Nationalist Desk were members of the first Joint Terrorist Task Force. They're the ones that are supposed to have the experience with Black radicals and Puerto Ricans and all of that, right? Then there was the Major Case Squad, which was an elite unit of detectives and NYPD policemen who were put together to, ostensibly, they were supposed to go after organized crime and drug smuggling large-scale drug smuggling and all of that stuff. So the Major Case Squad, the FBI and the FBI, along with the state intelligence apparatus and the NYPD's Bureau of Special Services, their intelligence unit. These came together and they formed the Joint Terrorist Task Force. Okay, the local governor, the mayor at that time, and all the way up to Dinkins had no control over this task force. They did not tell this task force what to do. They did not do any of it. They may have voiced some concern, or they may have asked the local police who were involved on the task force, to give them information. But when they were under somebody like Seidman, under a chief of police detective who was very close to the unions, who had a lot of union support, the task force basically did what it wanted to do. It went after who it went after. It killed a number of my comrades in ambushes, and it said that they were going after these folks because they shot and they killed police. Well, if we look at the BLA history, we understand that the first task force that came into existence between the feds and local government, the local government did not really control that task force. So to say that this woman, Lori, what's her name? Lori Lightfoot, to say that the sister, by saying, okay, well, we cool with it as long as you're just going to go after criminals, okay? But political prisoners are in prison because their movement was criminalized. I mean, this is the reason why we have a Black Lives Matter movement that doesn't know jack about political prisoners. They don't even know Sundiata Acoli is Assata Shakur's crime partner or associate. You understand? And they got Assata taught me on their T-shirt. They don't even know that. Okay, and when I told folks, for instance, about Al Sharpton and his snitch record and how he went after Assata Shakur, now the sisters were like, he did that. How is it that you're not in touch with your radical history, but the enemy is in touch with their institutional memory? And they knew what worked and what didn't and who it worked on. And you don't even know your radical tradition and where we failed and where we succeeded. So now you're going to reinvent failure. And that's what's happening right now. Because you have a movement that doesn't call itself the Black Liberation Movement, but instead of Black Lives Matter movement, you give oxygen and space to reforming white supremacy. And people could come forward and say, look, it's terrible what America did to you. Yeah, let's tear down a Robert E. Lee statue. Yes, that's right. It was about slavery. Okay, yeah, it was about slavery. Now we remember that we used to whip you. Now we remember we used to rape you. So let's fix it. And how do you fix it? You reform it. And how do you reform it? You talk about, we're going to ban the chokehold. We're going to put more cameras and they can't cut them off. We're going to have sensitivity training. We're going to get more Black officers on the police force. We're going to do all of that shit that they did.
Well, but to be fair, forgive the interruption again, but to be fair to some of these younger generations and even my own generation, but in particular the younger generations who I would argue are suffering a level of propaganda the world has never seen. They don't have ready access to Dhoruba bin-Wahad and to other political.
What do you mean you talking to me?
I'm talking to.
They ain't kill me yet.
No. I'm saying, but what I mean by that is not can we find you and reach out to you, but what I really mean by that is the encouragement to do so. Because the encouragement comes from, mainstream media putting Al Sharpton on TV every night or every week.
That's true.
Or from more well-supported, even, to the extent other political prisoners like Angela Davis, who are given a lot of attention, who comes out and promotes Biden and Obama. Yeah. My point is, it's confused. It would be confusing to a lot of people in the streets if she's, she is both symbolically and some would argue more substantively the image of Black radical struggle in this country, and she is routinely given attention and prominent space. And in her final conclusion, she's not saying go call Asada and call Dhoruba. She's saying vote for Joe.
Of course she's not. But this is my whole point. I think that's why I said use the second draft of the thing I sent you, not the first one. Mm-hmm. Because the only time that a traitor, and I'm not calling Angela a traitor, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about something a little tangentially to this. I'm not calling her that. I'm coming to her. Mm-hmm. But the whole period that we went through, where crack cocaine and all of that stuff was criminalized, and they were making more jails, putting more people in jail. You understand? You had the betrayers of the Black movement, the ones that betrayed King, that betrayed his poor people's campaign. You got to remember, and this is something I go over and over and over again, because it was King's murder that actually galvanized me to join the Black Panther Party. And I wasn't down with no turn no other cheek shit. I wasn't with that. Okay? And I mistakenly thought maybe in the headiness of my youth that to get beaten like that, you were a coward. But I see in retrospect, and I saw even then, that Martin Luther King was far from a coward. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And that he was motivated by ideal and by principles, just like Malcolm. Although those ideals and those principles might have been skewered because he came up in the church, because he came up in a tradition of that believed that God is love, and that if you love freedom, and if you love your people enough, that God will see you through. I mean, I got all of that.
But just like Du Bois, when people came at his house, he picked up that rifle, though.
But King ain't never stayed no place where he ain't had access to a shotgun. So you could talk all that. You could talk all that bust upside the head stuff. You understand? But he ain't went no place. He when he went to basic man, is that 12? Is that shotty over there? No?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm good. You understand what I'm saying? But what I'm trying to get at is that the system always burnished those individuals who abandoned King's vision. King died fighting for the rights of the most poverty-stricken working class, the most denigrated, marginalized workers in the Black community. Garbage men. You can't get lower than a goddamn garbage man. And King went there, and that's where he died. That's where he got his brains blown out, fighting for the rights of garbage men. Okay, and all those, and that poor people's campaign that he was mounting was focused on those ordinary, poor, marginalized workers, rural and urban. Because at that point in time, King's vision has changed. He understood the nature of white supremacy. He understood its relationship to working class people and how this country was wrought. Listen to his last speeches, where he breaks down capitalism, where he breaks down America as the foremost purveyor of violence in the world, where he breaks down imperialism, where he breaks down all of these things. And that man had to die at that moment. Now, he arrived at those politics like 4 and 4 years after Kwame Ture, after Huey P. Newton, after H. Rap Brown, but he arrived nonetheless. You see, he arrived nonetheless. He may have been late getting there, but he got there. You see what I'm saying? And then when he got there, the crackers had to shut him up. And when they shut him up, all of those individuals that were in that movement, look at all of them, C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, Jesse Jackson, what's the other guy's name? The other minister. They all abandoned the Poor People's Campaign and went for themselves. Jesse started Operation Push, and his whole thing was getting niggas in corporations and on public relations board. So
hold up, D. You know, John Lewis and C.T. Vivian are getting a lot of love and
don't start me on them. Did I send you that channel, the Black Station?
No.
Boy, homeboy went. I didn't send you that.
I don't remember it. I might have missed it, but
I'm
just saying.
As soon as we hang up, I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay.
Homeboy, I mean, this guy went. You gotta get some popcorn and listen to this. The homeboy cussed John Lewis out. He said, "Man, where in the world? When has ever white people had an icon? First of all, where's white folks' conscience of moral conscience? Where are the heroes of white people's moral conscience today in America? Where they at?" He said every hero that white folks have ever had was a violent person. He wasn't no pacifist. Look at the George Washington. Everyone that they claimed was a major contributor to Western civilization was not a pacifist. And the ones that were pacifists, they were from the East, and they were being emulated by white folks. Even Mahatma Gandhi was a goddamn racist. So we need to understand that we're the only ones that have leaders that are chosen for us based on how they got hit in the head and how much they done bled. Not that they didn't. And you can't find one legislation in Congress. I think Lewis was in there like 30 years or so. Right? You can't find one piece of legislation in Congress that John Lewis actually shepherded through and passed that has his name, that empowers black people. Name one piece of legislation. Name one. He's got he got white folks kneeling in the Congress. You understand? Wearing kente cloth. Did he criticize Obama's murder of Gaddafi? Hell no. Wasn't it John Lewis or that other one that looked like him, the other shoe polish lip Negro that died before him? He looked just like him from Baltimore. What was his name?
Cummings.
Cummings.
Mm-hmm.
These are the dudes that stood up, Jonas Savimbi, in Congress and said, "This is what a black man is like." Jonas Savimbi, who works for the CIA.
I mean, but but to your point that you just made a moment ago, you even to bring up Savimbi is to bring up a history and a context that nobody is talking, that nobody knows. So half the people that would see, whatever my audience is, half the people that see this are going to be confused.
Okay. But half the people you teach don't know what you're teaching them. But you teach it to them.
Well, but that's a whole other conversation. But my only point is, in making that point, is that when we try to assess why so many people would not know what you're talking about or would not understand the context of
because it was suppressed. It's stealth history.
As you talked about.
I wrote about that, stealth history, how history was rewritten. So they burnish, and this comes to Angela. So people in the past who they know have been amenable to this transition, those people that abandoned King, those people that took the poor people, Conyers and Lewis, they parlayed that into a political career. Okay, and then they went on to do absolutely nothing. Okay, the Congressional Black Caucus. The Congressional Black Caucus came out of the riots and the rebellions of the 60s and the lack of representation. It came out of the upsurge of black voter rights in the South. And now we have black elected representatives. There were so many of them, they formed a caucus. And one of the major things that they first formed the caucus around was the anti-apartheid movement. Okay, look at the Black Caucus today. Has the Black Caucus spoke on anything, on any U.S. policies in Africa? Has the Black Caucus called for hearings on AFRICOM? Has the Black Caucus called for USAID interests in Africa? What are they doing with African people? What are they doing to help? Nothing. But they could come out and stand on the steps and say that they're in solidarity with Israel.
Unless I was going to see, at the time, Cynthia McKinney, everybody else in Congress and the CBC in the years in the early 2000s when I was around covering and watching them more closely. I mean, you go to their caucus rooms and the walls are lined with every Wall Street, banking, telecom. You could see that the funding was being poured in from every institution and every wing of society that is anti-black and anti-progressive and anti-liberation.
Absolutely.
So
so that brings me to Angela.
Yeah,
so that brings me to Angela. Now, Angela has a completely different history. Mm-hmm. Okay, Angela comes from the left and the progressive wing of the black movement. You know, she's a communist baby. You know, she came out of a lot of her nurturing. I mean, when she went to college, Herbert Marcuse was one of her major scholastic mentors. Was Herbert Marcuse, and in fact, Herbert Marcuse was a brilliant Marxist, in my opinion. You know,
he was sharp.
He was bad. Mm-hmm. Ain't no question. You know, but so was George Jackson. And the only reason we know about Angela is not because of Herbert Marcuse, but because of George Jackson. And George Jackson has a passage in Blood in My Eye where he talks about the fascist moment, where he talks about America being in a fascist historical moment. Okay, now, and this was 30 years ago, 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So this tells us that when an empire declines, when an economy, when a nation that used to be number one or whatever begins to decline, it's not something that happens all of a sudden overnight. It's a process. It may take 50 years, it may take 60 years, but when the actual historical collapse comes in, sometimes that takes a matter of weeks and months. Mm. Everything just falls apart, like Soyinka says, falls apart at the middle. And so what we're in now, and the reason why I sent you that article is to show you that there was another historical moment when things could have been radically changed, and it predicted that what's going to happen now would happen. Because in the Church Committee report, they said that the reasoning that the FBI used COINTELPRO was to protect the institutions and to protect America for any type of subversion inside or outside. They went from just doing that to actually initiating events in order to justify doing that. That's what bag jobs were, breaking and entering. I mean, Watergate was a minuscule black job compared to what the FBI did to the black community. What they even did to the Panther 21 when they broke in the law commune and stole all the law commune and set it on fire. This was the FBI. And now we're looking at federal agents in unmarked uniforms, in unmarked cars, going into the areas that are highly disaffected with the status quo, that have taken over entire areas of different cities and proclaimed themselves liberated. These individuals have gone in, they're snatching people off the streets, throwing them in unmarked cars, taking them to the precinct and holding them and then releasing them. They had a process in COINTELPRO called snatch and interrogate. And what they would do, the local law enforcement would arrest somebody on some dubious charges, take them to the police station, then the FBI would come out the door in the back and start to question them and recruit them as agents. Okay? This is exactly what's happening now to these kids, and these kids don't know what the hell is happening to them because they got a hashtag movement. They don't know what's coming. And this is just the beginning So that's the reason why I sent this to you, so that when you read it, you could see when they formed the task force, the local folks didn't have no control over it. It had its own mission. Its mission was anti-urban guerrilla, was to squash the BLA, the FALN, the Weather Underground. That was their mission. And they had Major K Squad. Their mission was crime, but they were on the task force. Then you had the FBI, the guys from the Black Desk. Their mission was stop violence, but they were on the task force. You see what I'm saying? So we need to understand how these governments at these particular points in crisis, and remember, this was a Vietnam War. The same, when you read the article, you see the same time the Watergate broke, Nixon announced Vietnamization of the war. But the U.S. was withdrawing from Vietnam and was bringing its troops home. What does Trump do now? What does he talk about now? He tries to deflect what's going on, what's been going on in his administration to what? To the Iranians. He tries to deflect it to so-called Muslim terrorists, criminals migrants coming in at the border. These are all jingoistic postures that are typical of fascism. Fascism has always been exalting the nation and the race over the individual, over everybody. And fascism has always come from the right. It's never come from the left. And in fact, the target of fascism initially has always been the left.
That's right.
You see, and so, like you said, how do these kids know this? They don't know it unless we tell them. And this is why I wrote that letter to T.I. This is why I wrote these letters. And I really appreciate T.I. in the sense that.
How did that meeting go, by the way?
I was just getting ready to tell you. This is one of the reasons why I appreciate T.I. and I appreciate Ludacris and even Killer Mike. Is because the first question out of T.I.'s mouth when I said this is a fascist movement, he said, "Excuse me, brother, what exactly is fascism?"
Wow.
And that right there means that he came to this meeting with an attitude, man, I don't know what I don't know, and I got an idea about what I do know, but I do know what I do know, and I don't know that.
And this was the only criticism that I had when he and Killer Mike were literally assuming stages and speaking on behalf of Black liberation struggles, that while they were telling everybody, if you're not from the hood, you can't talk about the hood, they were assuming a very contradictory posture when it comes to politics and organization, when they don't have that background or that experience. They felt equally comfortable pontificating about what should happen there. So in other words, that's why I think it's revealing to me that would be something he would. First of all, it's revealing, but also I think a positive that he would be willing to engage. Sure. Yeah. This is why when we framed the letter, we didn't attack them, or we wasn't being accusatory or nothing like that. We just used our reputation and our background as saying, look, man, we need to talk, and because you guys can play a historical role right now. There's kids out on the streets, there's these rappers that look up to you as their OGs, that look up to you as their elders, as the ones that blaze the path for them to be where they at. Now, it's true that they're not talking about shit right now, most of them. And, they scrambled up and they ain't got a clue. I mean, some of them ain't got mental issues like Kanye. It's true. Okay, but there's a precedent for this, and why you have an important role, because history is going to judge you just like it's going to judge all of us right now. You see, so what is are they going to say about Killer Mike and about T.I. and about Ludacris the same thing we say about Harry Belafonte, and that we say about Nina Simone, and that we say about actors and artists and football players, Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali, that we say now? You never saw Muhammad Ali and Harry Belafonte with a mic in their face telling you what Martin Luther King should do and what we need to do and how we need to do this and how we need to do that. No, but you did see him on King's right-hand shoulder when he was marching, though. If you needed a playing field to get somewhere, Harry's the man. You see what I'm saying? If SLC wanted to organize an event in Selma, that's the man that helped us pay for this shit. And this is their role now.
And this is what I was trying to get across to them. It's not that you don't have a role. It's just that you have such a significant role, you don't even realize it right now. Because you have a movement that's mobilized, but it's not organized. And organizing this movement is getting them in touch with their radical history. Once they're in touch with this radical tradition, and the enemy is doing everything they can to make sure that they're not. Because when you look at MSNBC and you see the plethora of people they trot out there to explain shit, to explain divestment, to explain diverging funds, and defund the police, you see, none of them have got up there and explained that defunding and divesting and demilitarization of the police is integral to decentralization of law enforcement. Because that's all part of it. And when you talk about defund the police, you ain't talking about taking money from the police now. You're talking about taking money from policemen organized as they are now and sending it to police organized in the community under public safety. So in other words, we need community control of public safety. And because we pay taxes, you're supposed to fund that. That doesn't mean, do you think we want to close the police academy where they're getting trained on how to shoot? So we want a cop in the community that can't shoot? So you shoot all of us instead of the criminal? I don't think so. So that academy, yeah, it stays open. Yeah, you train the police, but those black police that come out of that academy, they live where they police now. Okay?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So what we're doing is reimagining a law enforcement based on our ability to control it, based on our own power paradigm. Same way with the prison industrial complex. What are we going to do with over 1 million black men and women coming out of the prison? Let's say they came out tomorrow. What are we going to do with them in the black community when we're underfunded, when we don't have no money, when there's gentrification, when housing is messed up, when unemployment is 3 times the national? So what are we going to do with all these black brothers that are traumatized by prison when they come back? This is why we have to struggle as if we already won. Because we have to understand the institutions that we're ready to put in place like that. And you won't pay for it. And by framing the conversation in reparations, you confuse the issue. You see?
All right, well, let's talk about that just quickly, because unfortunately we got to somewhat steer towards a close here a little bit. So I want to try to fold in these two issues, because one, I don't feel like it got at least from my view, I don't feel like we closed this loop or this discussion about Angela Davis since I brought her up, and I do want to.
Okay, yeah,
but I want to do it. But let me try to do it this way, because it was reminding me, because the last time we talked about her, I was working with another news organization and I got in trouble.
Now you're sitting in your living room.
But now I'm sitting in my living room, right?
But look at what we got out of it.
No, I love it. We got
that book out.
No, it's worth it.
The myth of black spending, the myth of the black dollar.
But the reason that there was some controversy out of it was because, well, from what I remember and how I understood it, was because you were critical of two sort of platform planks that are, I think, creating some of the struggles in this whole moment that you're talking about in this discussion. And one of them is you were critical of the so-called alternative or progressive press via Amy Goodman and Democracy Now!, who was hosting a conversation with Angela Davis, who you were also critical of, who is both a symbol of black liberation and progressivism in general, but also who has different conclusions from you about how not only we should talk about Asada, but in this case, how we should talk about electoral politics and what we should do with the vote. And in that critique, it caused a problem within this other nominally alternative white left media outlet. But I think whether it's the alternative so-called progressive white left or whether it's the black political public sphere, those two sort of platform planks that you were critical of in that moment, and somewhat here in this conversation again, are part of what is causing some of this confusion, at least as you're describing it, as inhibiting us reaching the conclusions that you're asking us to reach so that we can build some of these alternatives. And I'll add to that one of those, from my point of view, a third sort of platform struggle that in this moment that I'm hearing you becoming critical of, that I'm certainly critical of, is this movement of reparations, which from my vantage point also is coming up as you know, an activist and someone trying to struggle somewhat in the tradition that you've laid down for us. Reparations was never a platform play. It was never a key issue. It was usually described as a conservative endeavor for a variety of reasons. It's an appeal to the state. It requires support of the wealth creation process of capitalism for redistribution. And then just tactically to get the amount of white people in this country to vote for a redistribution of wealth just to Black people, in however it may occur, whether it's cash payouts or some institutionalized, you know, structural, you know, is itself problematic and not likely to occur. So I'm throwing all that out, and I want you, if you could, to address as much of that as possible as you, and I'll let you just steer us towards what has to unfortunately become a close here. But in anything, you know, please respond or add to what I've said here, or correct anything that you think I've may have been mistaken.
I think the reason why I said reparations is a distraction is not because reparations in terms of economic, in terms of its basis, its historical basis, being something that's valid, that can be a valid claim. Mm-hmm. It's not that. It's just that because we've endured so much as a people and have received so little in return, and because we have built the wealth and the prosperity of an empire on our backs with no appreciable return for that labor, it makes reparations a seriously emotional issue. And because it's an emotional issue, we insert it at any given moment historically whenever we are up against the how should you say it, the arrogance and the arrogance and the pride of white supremacy. You see, whenever we're confronted with an institution, we'll say, man, y'all niggas y'all crackers still owe us 20 acres and a mule. We bug out. You see, but in fact, reparations can only occur when there's a global redistribution of the wealth. And a global redistribution of the wealth is not going to occur unless global capitalism is in such of a crisis where it has to reestablish or try to reassert itself and can't do it. And right now we're at that moment. We happen to be right now at this moment. And instead of calling for reparations, this is why people from all over the world took to the streets with a George Floyd. George Floyd, he's not Asian. George Floyd ain't Iraqi. George Floyd ain't Yemenis. George Floyd ain't from Saudi Arabia. George Floyd ain't from France. George Floyd ain't from Italy. But when he got stomped out and murdered, people from around the world came out. And unfortunately, because the movement was defined by the enemy, they only had Black Lives Matter to shout. So they came out, Black Lives Matter in France, Black Lives Matter in Iraq, where there's no Black people. Black Lives matters in Tehran. Black Lives Matter because people all over the world after this, because of this virus, have realized that the state cares nothing about them as human beings, does not have their interests in heart, only wants them to go out and work and get in debt and make money so that they could stay rich. It doesn't care about their health. It doesn't care about their prosperity. It doesn't care about anything. And this virus has revealed that to everybody. And everybody, I've been to a few places around the world, just as you have, I'm sure, and you'll see that everybody, whenever you talk about their local police, they have the same attitude towards their police that we have towards ours. So the police is the police of the national security state that have this function that oppress and repress their own people. It's their function. It's the militarized function. It's the military function of domestic law enforcement to protect property, to squash dissent, and protect the rich. And everybody saw that. The Wall Street movement was one of the first mass global movements that we had that was anti-capitalist, straight away. And what happened to that movement? It's gone. It's gone. Obama, a Black guy, got all the governors together and said, man, we got to stop this shit. And they squashed it in, what, a week? Now, a lot of these young white radicals that we see, and this is one of the things that you see, and I want to say this, it's very important, that when we look at the streets, when we look at the people on the streets, they're not just black. You have white folks, you have Latinos, you have women, gay, everybody is on the streets. This is unprecedented. Yeah, we had the Youth Against War and Fascism, we had the Yippies, and we had SDS, and we had white folks demonstrating on the left, but it was never like this. You see, and the problem with this is that these white kids on the streets, especially the ones that they so-called labeling as Antifa, and these white kids on the streets, they're the ones that targeted CNN and not the pawn shop. They're the ones that targeted the police stations.
Well, one thing that's definitely not, I'm sorry to get interrupt, but one thing that's definitely not getting reported was that in 2018, the military, the Air Force, I believe in particular, was running war games in preparation for what they thought or still think is the coming Z-bellion in the mid-2020s, where before even COVID hit, they were predicting that the economic, this generation was not getting anything that all generations are promised, and was going to come to you know to this moment one way or another. So they were a crisis or not, a COVID or not, they were predicting that. But COVID, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
But COVID-19 and the way it maturated and the way it spread and how it happened and how people were locked in and how people were locked down. Now you have a division just over face masks.
Right.
You see, you have crackers that talk about, you can't tell me to wear a face mask. Okay, so kill me and kill you too, because you want some cracker shit. You want some don't tread on me shit. Okay, I'm gonna tread on your ass when you on the ground and you in the ground. Then everybody treading on you. So the fact that something like this, the pandemic created this nuance that may have took a little longer to maturate. But getting back to reparations, what I'm trying to say is that we see now there's just only 5 men. Last time I read, I think it was 5 white men, 3 of them from the U.S. that control almost 70% of the planet's wealth. 5 crackers. 5. This can't continue. Okay, and the virus brought it along. When's the last time you see the American oil industry go down to $0 a barrel? Not even during the Arab-Israeli war and the embargo, and the oil embargo of the 70s has the price of oil. Shale oil is finished in America, and you remember it was shale oil that boosted America to the number 2 or number 1 producer, exporter of oil in the world. Now you have oil sitting in oil tankers off the shores to be stored. You can't even have enough storage space. Why? Because nobody's driving their car. Because everybody got locked down, nobody's driving. So now everybody's seeing this relationship. All of a sudden, gas is like $97 a gallon. Well, if it's $97 now, 97 cents a gallon now, and it was $2.57 just a month ago, it didn't even have to be that price if it could be this now. It's the same way with rents. They forgive your rent. Well, if they forgave my rent all these months, why am I paying this stupid rent every month? Why can't I, as a poor person who has this limited budget, why can't I pay rent every 3 months at 1/3 the price per month? I mean, why? You could. What? Bernie Sanders, universal health care. We can't afford it, but you could print $5 trillion worth of money and give $3 trillion to the banks. But how can you not afford it if you're printing the money? See, all of these things become self-evident to even any ordinary person. If we look now, when's the last time you saw black low-income workers and unions across the country unite with the so-called Black Lives Matter movement and start calling strikes, start talking about how what Black Lives is talking about and what we as workers that you're now calling first responders and heroes, and you didn't want to give us an adequate income just 2 months ago. Just 2 months ago, man, we couldn't get a minimum wage.
But this is the point of my last question to you, that the response from the state and those in power has been even more propaganda, more punditry, more support for journalism and media production that encourages people to, again, just reduce all of this energy so defunding the police becomes privatizing the police under the Koch brothers platform.
Or it becomes taking the $60 billion budget of the LA Police Department and giving $1 billion to some, to daycare and some social programs. But the purpose of the police, their mentality, their methods of operation don't change at all.
Or to tell everybody that you have to vote for Biden and hope, and then later we'll come back to developing,
and then we expect Biden, a Biden or Kamala Harris to put reparations on their agenda. I mean, that's ridiculous. Reparations is on the agenda when we as a people have a movement in solidarity with other peoples around the world's movement who are demanding that that there be a new distribution of wealth.
But wait a minute. Now I'm hearing something new from you. Are you actually saying that the struggle for reparations for Black people in the United States is an international movement? It needs to be an international movement? Because I think a lot of people online would be surprised.
Oh, you have the ADOS people who are going to tell you that, I mean, let's be real here. When we actually look at the slave trade, when we actually look at the European slave trade, it was a feature of mercantile capitalism. It was a feature of early mercantile capitalism. I mean, you know that. Everybody knows that. Even the most ardent, Black nationalists, who's wearing red, black, and green underwear knows that. Okay, so we know that. So mercantile capitalism. I mean, the chattel slave, the transatlantic slave trade that brought us from Africa over here. When it brought us to Africa, when it brought us over here, we didn't all speak one language. We didn't have all of these one language. We came from different areas, different people speaking different languages. It's even said that 1/3 of the captured Africans were Muslim. And so we had indigenous religions, we spoke Fulani, we spoke Wachaga, we spoke all of these different languages. We were melded into a people here. We became a unique people here. This is where we became a unique people, under these onerous conditions. So in that sense, reparations for us has to do with the development of the United States from a European settler state to a global empire. And now that it's a global empire, it reinforces this unequal distribution of the world everywhere based on its creation of a permanent subclass of us here. So when the U.S. is rolled back as an empire, when the U.S. can no longer draw money from as an empire, then reparations for us becomes a feasible thing. Because now, how are we going to talk about giving the Palestinians back their land? And how are we going to talk about the freedom of African nations to determine their own destiny? And we right here in the U.S., who developed the idea of Pan-African internationalism, it didn't come from Africa. It came from Garvey. It came from us. It came from our historical experience. So what I'm trying to say to you, if we are truly internationalists, if our oppression is truly reflective of the oppression around the world, reparations is only possible when there's a equal redistribution of the wealth. And that the elite here that are profiting, like I said, it's five crackers. Okay, these five crackers. Now, I'm just saying that to not say that they don't represent a whole edifice and a finance capitalism. I mean, they ain't just doing this from their living room or nothing. Right. Or you understand when I say five? But people have the impression that they just clicking on their cash out and they just transfer $1 billion. I ain't talking about that. We're talking about finance capitalism. We're talking about its institutions. We're talking about Wall Street. Why was Wall Street in Tulsa burned down? Why was all of these, every time we showed any type of wealth accumulation, we had to be kicked back down? Why? Because the U.S. has evolved from a nation state at one point, out of a European settler state into a global empire. And reparations then becomes a feature and a part of that global empire. Reparations is owed to us just like the crackers in France owe reparations to West Africa. They owe them that, you see? So how's the U.S. going to pay reparations to us and France don't pay reparations to Africans where we came from? How does that work?
I'm just saying, when I follow the so-called logic online with ADOS and some others, the argument is that the movement for reparations in the United States will fail because it will be dragged down by connections to other communities and other people who have benefited on the backs of what has happened.
Okay, fine. If that's the case, how is that the case? The same family that's sitting in power right now in Accra, Ghana, the president, his family goes all the way back to the niggas that sold us to slavery. He does. His family does. They're the same ones that betrayed Nkrumah.
So this would be ADOS's point. This makes sense.
But no, that's beside their point. That's the whole point. Look at it this way. He's part of Africom. Now, he's part of Africa. They sat by with their hands closed while Gaddafi was murdered. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that ADOS says that black folks in America are the only ones that deserve reparation because of what was done to them. Anybody else that came from Africa, anybody else that thinks that they deserve reparations is not on the same par with us. Okay, the weakness of that argument. The weakness of that argument is that ADOS is not revolutionary. No, ADOS is not. They're not talking about the overthrow of the U.S. government.
No.
Now, if you overthrow the U.S. government, and reestablish a social paradigm, the reparations is ipso facto going to happen. But you have to lead that movement. Them niggas that ADOS ain't going to lead shit.
Well, again, my whole point with them in particular, and I think reparations in general, is that with them, their role is to be a black front to white supremacist anti-immigration movements, and to muddy up the public debate around what reparations are.
That's what their function. That's what
their function is. But I also just think tactically, even for the non-ADOS, more progressive supporters of reparations, it still requires a view from a majority, not even just white. All these other groups of people would have to use their electoral strength to support redistribution of wealth only to black people.
The only way redistribution of wealth is going to occur in America is when we have a reorganization of power. You got to remember, we don't care what white folks think about us personally. White supremacy is not a personal thing.
Correct.
Okay, so we don't care if white folks think that we monkeys or we alligators or we come from the jungle. That doesn't matter. But when they translate those sentiments into actions and policies that affect our lives, now we have to be concerned with it. So what we have to do is create the type of power paradigms where they cannot implement those ideas against us, which starts with the community. All politics is local. If you're talking about go vote, okay, what are we going to vote for? We're going to vote for a referendum to decentralize the police and put it on the ballot. And seeing that we're the majority in this city or in this electoral space here, we're going to pass that. Which means that now the mayor can't appoint the police chief no more, which means that now each community district or each electoral district has its own control over public safety, has its own public safety board, and they appoint their own public safety supervisor, who then sits on a board of public safety supervisors headed by one of their appointed chairpersons. So now you have community control of the police, okay? Now you could talk about residency laws. Now each community could talk about those issues in the community that really affect them, that really affect their lives and their lifestyles. Like we want these street sets off. We want these kids to stop murdering each other in the streets. How do we deal with that? It's a very simple process, but you first have to have local power. You first have to give these kids an alternative and say, look, man, y'all could either become our first responders or y'all motherfuckers can get the fuck out of here. Because we will fuck you up. Now, you're going to either benefit this community and protect this community, or you're going to get out of here. Now, where they going to go? Their mama and their aunts and their sisters and their uncles is the same community that they're gangbanging in. That's where they come from. They just never have been given any responsibility in that community. They all monkey hustling. They're all illegitimate capitalists. They're slinging yayo. They're doing whatever they can because they don't have no place in this capitalist society for them to prosper. Most of these these kids that's bleeding, well-organized drug gangs, they would be chief executives on Wall Street if they had the opportunity to work within the corporate structure. These dudes would be just as sharp as Maddow and all of them that was making off with people's money. Come on, man. I know Jazz Hayden and Bumpy Johnson and that other nigga that turned snitch. What's his name?
Nicky Barnes.
Nicky Barnes. Yeah, I was in jail with that knucklehead. He always think I was trying to kill him. But anyway,
wait, man, you got to tell that we got to get.
This is all in my book. Nah. Y'all been squeezing my book out of me for the last 5 years. You understand? I've been dropping dribs and jabs.
You have. You have indeed.
And then y'all all criticize me. We will read that book.
We just hungry, man. We thirsty.
No, but I'm just saying, these guys would have been brilliant corporate executives. I mean, come on, man. We ain't talking about no poop, but Negroes here. These dudes had some sharp minds, although they invented to criminal purposes, and they were illegitimate capitalists, but that's more of a situation of circumstance, opportunity, and a whole lot of other things. Like, people don't even understand the term black on black crime came out of the 60s as a propaganda response to the word pig. The cops were pigs. Everybody said the cops was pigs back then. It was popular. Off the pig. Everybody knew. Every time a riot jumped off, they was talking about pigs kill. They killed little Junior over there on 4th Street. Man, I told you about them pigs. Now the cops come out with, we ain't pigs. We servants of the people. We're here to serve and protect. We are here to serve and protect. So black on black crime were poverty pimps who were paid by LBJ on the war on poverty. As they start getting their programs together, they wanted to refocus community energy away from law enforcement, away from public safety, to them. And so they would say that, what about black on black crime? Always talking about the cops killing us. We killing each other. White folks kill each other. You don't say it's white on white crime. White folks got 2 world wars of killing each other in an industrial scale. You see what I'm saying? And they've been killing each other since time immemorial. Okay, so why isn't it white on white crime? Why don't you say it's white on white crime and therefore you need to put these police in the white community? We know that even during the war on drugs, the majority of folks using those drugs were white folks. Just,
Well, that's why, as you said earlier, Nixon admitted, it was admitted later, but everybody knew for a while that this was the pretense for getting rid of the black liberation struggle, the claim there was a war on drugs.
And therefore, but they can't get rid of it. And this movement shows that out of nowhere it came. Okay, but because they're not attached to their radical history, they call it the Black Lives Matter movement. And the enemy knows that, and they took that hashtag and run with it. So anybody could pop up in any city with a Black Lives Matter t-shirt on with signs over somebody being murdered or brutalized by the police, and they'll stick a microphone in this your activist face, and they say, so what do you want? Well, first of all, we want these cops brought to justice. They're using the word justice and brought to by the state is an oxymoron.
But again, these are people like myself who grew up watching marches led by people like Al Sharpton saying no justice, no peace. And what the hell does that mean, especially out of the mouth of somebody like a Sharpton? So, so listen, as much as possible, obviously we at Our Mix What I Like are here to help get this information out. We stay in regular contact with you and other political prisoners as much as possible and support others doing that great work as well. And unfortunately, it is me having to wrap this up as much as I would love to keep this going all day and night. So we will invite people to check out your latest excerpt from your book that we're getting squeezed out of you at ourmixwhatilike.org, and ask people to stay in touch with us and with you to follow up, and of course our comrades with Community Movement Builders with whom you also do work and all this. All of this is somewhat linked up. But any concluding thoughts? I'll let you have the last word, and I just want to thank you again for your work and for joining us again here today.
No, I just want to say, first of all, that your book, The Myth of the Black Earning Power, I just want to say that's a very valuable document right now. And I want to try to put you out, kick you out there and say that, George Jackson's Blood in My Eye, I think that one of the ways we could really help re-educate this leadership real fast is that we reach out to some of the more prominent activists in the different municipalities in the so-called Black Lives Matter movement, and try to enlist them in what can be better called an online reading club, a reading thing. And we take this one excerpt from George Jackson's on fascism, and we send it to them, and at the same time we send them with an overview of what's happening right now, and ask them, what do you think we should do right now? In giving what George says, where do you think we should go? Do you think calling for a united front against fascism between now and electoral in November is the right thing to do? Do you understand now what fascism, how it manifests itself in poor housing, ill health, and how we're teetering on that brink? What do you think? I think the quickest way to educate people is to use George's Blood in My Eye and that type of methodology, because it's very, like you said, no one gives me a platform, and I read stuff on Al Jazeera. I was just listening to NPR and 3 or 4 professors talking about the legacy of John Lewis. I mean, this shit, I mean, if I was eating at the time, I'd have probably threw up. I mean, this was so pathetic. And and when I'm listening to these people, I'm saying to them, they're not really, trying to be mean, or they're not really trying to intentionally deceive me. I'm feeling that maybe they're not doing that, but I'm saying to myself, how could they not see what they're saying about this guy? And then I realized it's a need, a desperate need on the mainstream media, of all these people to try to put into a box the rewriting or the revelation of the truth about American history. They call it cancel culture.
Cancel culture. Now, where do white folks come up with? If anybody talk about cancel culture, we the ones who talk about getting canceled out. We canceled out. I mean, crackers canceled us out. They made us footnotes to European history. What does Amilcar Cabral say? That Black liberation, the African liberation, is the return to the African historical continuum that was interrupted by the Europeans. So everywhere we look in the Black history books, Africans are a footnote. Africans are addendum. But they the main players. They the mainstream of where the world is going and where culture is going. So now when we reassert our history, we're canceling their shit out. Really? And the problem is that these Black activists actually get on TV and argue within that context. Mm-hmm. They won't take the discussion out of the, say, I didn't come here to argue about no cancel. Who coined the term cancel culture? I bet you we can't even find out who did it. It just came out of the ear. When you tear down Robert E. Lee, you're canceling culture. I would have loved to cancel Robert E. Lee. Fuck his culture. So you talking about canceling culture. Where did that come from? And the only reason you can say that is because you have a movement that's not, quote, a Black liberation movement. It says it's a Black liberation movement. It's a Black Lives Matter movement. So you cancel now Lee because he exploited and murdered and enslaved Black lives, not because he was an expression of the conflict within mercantile capitalism at that time between wage slavery and chattel slavery. United States could have never became an empire if it wasn't for the Civil War. And the Civil War had translated the wealth, because America was already the #1 producer of cotton on the planet. It was already on its way of wealth accumulation that couldn't be reversed. But it had moved into industrialization that Europe moved into a little earlier, okay? And it had to have an educated working class, an urban educated working class. And you can't have an educated working class when you got chattel slaves who are uneducated, you understand, and you don't pay at all. So that's
And that was the essence of the Civil War. It was all about slavery. It was all about us. It was all about that. How the fuck you gonna talk about canceling out their culture, canceling out their history? When in fact, we was the reason why they did it. Now we're low income wage slaves. We got slaves running the plantation. We got black mayors in black cities and their plantations, because almost look at all the police murders, the most brutal ones. They occurred in cities where the mayor was black. And sometimes the police chief was black.
Well, didn't what's his name? Wilson, Mayor Good in Philly came out and apologized for Move.
Yeah,
30 years later.
30 years later, with one foot on the banana peel and the other one on the grave. He said, yeah, well, I got to probably meet them. When their ancestors before, and I'm going to have to meet them, and they're going to sit down and have to sit down with John Africa, and John Africa's going to be sitting there whittling a toe.
Come on in.
So what happened? So you don't say nothing when they kill my, come here, baby.
Come
on, this little baby.
John Africa like, come on in, bro.
Come on. But he probably ain't going. But that's assuming there's no heaven and there's no hell and everybody's in the same place. Hey. I'm quite sure John Africa is in the equivalent of heaven, and that piece of shit gonna go to hell.
I would hope so.
And down there with Hitler getting sodomized by Mussolini and Cecil Rhodes. And
wow.
You know, I mean, if I was one of them old painters, like who's that dude used to Modigliani or what?
Right. That's your landscape. That's your artscape right there. Hey, look, listen. Unfortunately, I gotta run. Dhoruba bin-Wahad, thank you again, man. I always appreciate the work and the time that you have already put in, that you continue to put in. Thank you very much.
All right, man. Thank you, man. And I just hope we can try to get some folks to understand what fascism is, because these young people, they got it, man, and they should, they got to take this ball and run with it.
I mix what I like.